The allure of keeping exotic animals in captivity can be captivating, but the potential dangers lurking beneath the surface can be deadly. While these fascinating creatures may seem docile, their inherent wild instincts can prove to be treacherous for those who hold them captive. From venomous snakes to massive predators, the risk of injury or even death is ever present. In some unfortunate cases, owners may underestimate the demands of caring for these animals, leading to accidents or escapes that have catastrophic consequences for everyone around them. In today's episode, we'll be going over 3 of the most terrifying times an exotic pet attacks. Hit that like button and subscribe right now. Welcome to Final Affliction. Jerome and Sandra Harold were a devoted couple who lived in Stamford, Connecticut. They were a lovely family with only one daughter named Susan. Susan was soon married, eloping with her husband, and the once lively and busy house was reduced to quietness. On October 24, 2003, the lonely couple got tired of the boredom and bought a 3-day-old chimp for $50,000. The chimp, whom they named Travis after Sandra's favorite country music star Travis Tritt, lived with the couple at their home. The couple bathed, bottle-fed, dressed, and even brushed Travis's teeth. They loved and adored the chimp, treating him as their own surrogate baby. He had brought a renewed sense of purpose and liveliness into the house, providing something to keep the couple busy following their daughter's departure. As Travis grew, he embraced the ways of his human parents, learning how to decipher their verbal and nonverbal language. The couple had to restructure their house to accommodate the fast-growing chimp. They created a huge room and hung swinging tires on ropes for Travis to play and roam. He was ever busy swinging and jumping on the couch and bed as the couple worked on other errands. At the dinner table, Travis had a seat and a stemmed wine glass. He took his meals with the family. The couple had really pampered him. Soon, everyone in Stamford knew him. Neighbors and the police held and waved at Travis whenever they saw him. His friendly nature won the residents' hearts, and within no time, he was a local celebrity. He could dress himself, feed hay to the horses, open locked doors with a key, as well as water plants. To him, technology was a curious feat that he strived to learn. His love for baseball had him mastering watching TV using the remote control. The chimp could also boot and log into the family computer and browse pictures. He had a weak spot for ice cream, which had him memorizing the days and times that the ice cream truck passed by the house. In 2003, the couple headed to town to replenish their supplies, carrying Travis in the back seat with his window partially open. They were stuck in traffic when a person walking past threw an empty soda can into the car, hitting Travis. Calmly, Travis unbuckled his seatbelt, unlocked the car door, and chased after the culprit. However, Travis didn't catch up with him. He then knuckle-walked to the tarmac, lay on his stomach, and started rolling, bringing the traffic to a halt. The traffic officers had to call for backup, as the drivers and other locals were treated to a humorous chase. Travis smiled as he skidded and jumped over cars, evading the over a dozen police officers after him. The chase went on for almost 2 hours before a tired Travis finally walked himself back into the car and buckled his seatbelt. This incident led to the Connecticut authorities passing a law that ordered no resident to own a pet primate weighing more than 50 pounds. Travis was luckily exempted from the rule because the Heralds had owned him for long and the authorities believed he posed no risk. Unfortunately, in 2004, a year after this incident, Jerome Harold lost his battle with stomach cancer. This left Sandra and Travis, who saw Jerome as his alpha, deeply devastated. The home was once again covered by a cloud of sadness as Sandra was down in the dumps. However, that wasn't the only pressing issue, as soon enough, officers from the Stamford Animal Control Department started knocking at her door. The officers were concerned for Sandra's safety. With Travis transitioning into early childhood, he had now amassed enough strength to equal 5 muscular men. He was prone to aggression, especially during his adolescence, which meant he would be hard and harmful for Sandra to control. The animal control officers advised Sandra that keeping the chimp in the coming years was impractical. Having never shown any signs of aggression or violence, Sandra was not worried. With grief over her gone husband gripping her like a vice, Sandra sunk into depression, halting all her social activities and communication. She spent days sitting and rocking back and forth on her chair by their yard as she watched the sunsets. Her unstable and vulnerable condition had profound effects on Travis, who spent his days eating snacks as he watched TV. He never left the house, and with little to no physical activity, Travis found himself ghastly obese at 240 pounds. His once shiny face had turned black, full of wrinkles. His chest had shifted from sturdy to flabby as hair loss took over. On Sunday, February the 15th, 2009, Sandra picked up her phone and rang her close friend Charla Nash, inviting her for a lively chat. Sandra and Charla had been friends for years, and she was a frequent visitor to the Herald's house. Travis knew Charla, having seen her uncountable times. After catching up, the two left Travis alone and headed to Mohegan Sun Casino. They began with the salon and had their hair made before heading for dinner. Afterwards, the duo enjoyed gambling before heading home. On setting foot into the house, an eerie feeling stirred Sandra differently. She noticed that Travis was uninterested in his favorite ice cream. The TV and computer were off, which was odd, considering how much Travis loved his shows. Sandra mixed with the chimp's tea before retiring to bed. The next morning, February 16th, 2009, Sandra woke up to find Travis aimlessly romping in the yard. She tried calling him back into the house, but he ignored. Something was off. She immediately rang Charla and informed her of Travis's behavior. Without hesitation, Charla got into her car and sped to Sandra's home to help her get Travis back into the house. She alighted and picked Travis's favorite toy, a red Tickle Me Elmo, that she hoped was a good bait to lure Travis back into the house. The duo, feeling confident in their ability to handle Travis, headed out to the yard, but on seeing his favorite toy, Travis snapped. As if driven by a fierce possessiveness over his favorite toy, Travis lunged forward, throwing Charla to the ground. He then stood over her, and using his massive jaws, he sunk his teeth into her face. As Travis's jaws clamped, Charla let out a chilling scream that echoed through the neighborhood. Travis ripped off her lips and nose and tore her eyelids. Sandra quickly grabbed a shovel and hit Travis several times, but he was unstoppable. He continued biting and attacking Charla, completely crashing her facial structure. Sandra dashed back to the house, grabbed a kitchen knife, and stormed back out to help her friend. Travis was so engrossed in the rampage that he didn't notice Sandra approaching him. With all her might, Sandra plunged the knife into the chimp's back and took a step back. Travis stopped mauling Charla and turned, glaring at Sandra with his eyes wild with rage. He then turned to Charla and continued mauling her as if nothing had happened. Charla could hear the sounds of her own bones snapping as Travis bit off her left hand. She shouted at him, "Travis, stop!" But Travis was in a frenzy. Seeing the ferocity of Travis and foreseeing that she was going to be next, Sandra got into her car and locked all the doors. Her hands were shaking with fear and her heart pounding in her chest as she fumbled for her phone and called 911.
What's the problem?
Send the police!
What's the problem there?
The chimp killed my friend!
What's the problem with your friend?
Oh, please!
What's the problem with your friend? I need to know.
Send the police up! With a gun! With a gun! He ripped her face off!
He ripped her face off?
He's trying to attack me! Please!
Okay,
hurry.
I need you to calm down a little bit. They're on the way. Can you put yourself away? I don't want the monkey attacking you.
Please, hurry up! Listen to me!
They're on the way, ma'am.
They gotta shoot him, please! Please, hurry!
Are you there with your friend? I need you to help your friend. Can you go help your friend?
I can't! He tried to attack me now!
Is he still there with your friend?
Yes.
Okay, so then back off. Then don't get any closer, okay? They're already on the way.
Please.
If the monkey moves away from your friend, let me know, okay? So we could try to help your friend.
No, I can't. She's dead. She's dead.
Why are you saying that she's dead?
She's dead. He ripped her apart.
He ripped what apart? Her face?
Everything.
He ripped her apart?
I think I'm gonna faint. I think I'm gonna pass out.
No, just breathe, okay? I'm gonna stay with you on the phone until they get there.
Listen to me. Please hurry. Please hurry. Oh my God.
Sandra felt like her heart was in her throat as she watched Charla lie unconscious. Officer Frank Chiafari, who was the first to respond to the 911 call, found Travis roaming in the yard as Charla lay unconscious with her tattered clothes covered in her own blood. The enraged Travis then circled the police car, looking for an open door. Inside, Officer Frank was scared to death as the 240-pound chimp smashed the passenger window and unlocked the door. The officer fired 4 shots at Travis. The injured chimp stumbled into the house, got on his bed, and took his last breath. In the following months, Charla underwent multiple surgeries to restore her distorted face. Her left hand had been mauled, as well as 3 fingers on her right hand. Her injuries were so severe that the medical team under her care had to undergo counseling because of the trauma of tending to her. The toxicology report on Travis revealed that he had been dosed with which may have fueled his aggression. Others argued that Charla had changed her hair color and curls, making her unrecognizable as she held Travis's favorite doll, which spooked him. No matter what caused Travis to attack, Charla still lives with the trauma and scars that came with it, constantly reminding her of the day she narrowly escaped her final affliction.
Humphrey was a hippo. He had been rescued at a young age after getting into difficulties when his river flooded. As a baby, he was taken in by wildlife lovers who cared for him for a short while. But with Africa's most dangerous animal comes a great deal of responsibility, and they could no longer care for him. That's when 40-year-old Marius Els decided to take him in. At that point, Humphrey was 5 months old and was growing fast. Marius was an army major turned farmer who was experienced at keeping some of Africa's wild animals. In the past, he had cared for a giraffe and a rhino, but nothing could prepare him for Humphrey. He allowed the hippo to roam his 400-acre farm, which sat on the banks of the Vaal River in Free State, South Africa. The Vaal River provides irrigation for the surrounding countryside and farmland. Part of this river ran through Marius's farm. Redirecting some of this water, he built a dam for Humphrey to swim in. As he grew up, Humphrey the hippo was learning all the time from Marius. He may have looked up to him, seeing him as a member of his family. Marius certainly felt like the hippo was part of his family in the same way a cat or dog is. Marius spent a great deal of time with the young Humphrey. Soon, the hippo responded to Marius's voice and came to him when he was called. Marius would spend the entire day with his newfound friend. They went swimming together, and Humphrey even allowed Marius to ride on his back, sometimes while trotting through the water and sometimes while grazing on land. Marius even trained Humphrey to open his mouth so that he could brush his teeth. It was quite something to see. Marius would feed sweet apples into the enormous open jaws of Africa's most dangerous animal. The hippo would expose its 20-inch long canines, razor-sharp, strong, and powerful. Humphrey would gobble the apples up. They were used as a treat or reward when Marius was training him. This way, Humphrey would obey commands and was under strict control by Marius. He had become domesticated, or so Marius thought. As Humphrey grew, so did their bond. Marius thought of him like a son weighing up to 3,000 pounds and standing 5 feet tall, a son that was soon to betray his father. On more than one occasion, Humphrey wandered out of his enclosure and made his way to the nearby golf course. He wreaked havoc with the golfers, chasing them around and around in delight. Marius would laugh this off, simply describing the behavior of the amphibious giant as playful and friendly. The golfers weren't pleased being chased by a 2,600-pound hippo. But when Marius whistled, Humphrey shook his head at the players and dutifully trotted back to his master. He responded only to his owner, and Marius felt confident in his ability to control one of Africa's largest mammals. But Humphrey's mischievous behavior was becoming increasingly dangerous. On another occasion, Humphrey sought out a 52-year-old man and his 7-year-old grandson. The two of them were paddling by the property in their canoe. Silently, they glided by the farm along the River Val when Humphrey rushed into the water. He charged towards them menacingly. Hippos can run at speeds of up to 19 miles per hour on land and push through the water at 5 miles per hour. He was no match for the pair, and they hurriedly jumped out of their boat and scrambled up the nearest tree. With Marius nowhere to be seen, the two terrified locals remained in the tree for over 2 hours, while Humphrey paced around the base of the trunk, becoming increasingly frustrated. They clapped and yelled, trying to scare him away, but Humphrey wasn't having any of it. Eventually, Marius showed up and tempted Humphrey back into his enclosure with an apple, much to the relief of the man and his grandson. Humphrey continued to escape from his enclosure, seeking out mischief when he did so. He ran through neighboring farmland, chasing livestock and killing young calves. He even threw Marius off his back when he didn't want him there. Marius's friends didn't want to go anywhere near Humphrey. He was beginning to become unruly. Although outsiders could see Humphrey was developing increasingly aggressive habits, Marius was blind. He was blinded by the love of his unique and loyal pet. He laughed off any complaints, simply describing the hippo as a lovable, gentle giant. And indeed, he probably was at one time. But as he grew towards adolescence and sexual maturity, Humphrey's urge for dominance grew. He was beginning to find his place in the world. He was beginning to realize his own brute strength and the damage he could inflict without any consequences. Hippos account for around 500 deaths in Africa every year. Some say the number is far higher. Either way, they are the world's most dangerous mammal and twice as deadly as lions. They can open up their jaws 180 degrees and clamp them shut with a bite force 10 times stronger than a human's. Marius documented his life with Humphrey, uploading videos of himself riding on the hippo's back. People loved this spectacle, and millions viewed his photos and videos. Comments came flying in, and Marius felt good about the attention he was receiving for this special relationship. But Marius's bond was so tight that he, foolishly, trusted Humphrey with his life. On November 12, 2011, tragedy struck. Marius walked into the large expanse of Humphrey's enclosure and onto the riverbank. As usual, Humphrey came trotting up to him. He was boisterous and enthusiastic. As he nudged Marius, he nearly knocked him over. He frequently pushed Marius when he wanted a treat, but his nudges were becoming stronger and he was becoming less patient. Marius handed him an apple, but Humphrey continued to pester him. Marius tried to walk past Humphrey to go down to the river, but the hippo stood still. The enormous animal shook its head and grunted. Marius shrugged off the behavior and tried once more to step past him. Humphrey shook his head again and opened his huge jaws, showing off his enormous canines, a display of aggression and dominance. At that moment, Marius knew something was wrong. Something was different. He knew that this wasn't the hippo he had nurtured as a baby. Humphrey had changed. Mother Nature was coursing through Humphrey's veins, and pure instinct led him to attack. Marius could see the glint in Humphrey's eyes. He could see the bristles on his snout. He could smell the freshly chewed grass on the hippo's breath. And then it came, a bite so forceful that Marius could do nothing but gasp. Marius fell to the floor as two of the hippo's canines severed his skin, muscle, and bone. He felt the immense pressure on his torso and heard the crunch of his legs as they gave way. Marius tried to claw his way away, but Humphrey came for him again and again. Mercilessly, the hippo attacked his master. He attacked his caregiver. He killed his friend. Marius breathed his last breath looking into the eyes of his best friend, his unrecognizable eyes, the eyes of a killer. Marius's body rolled into the water and lay submerged until emergency crews discovered it a few hours later. Marius had been betrayed. He had truly believed that he and Humphrey had a special bond, a bond that would last a lifetime. But while you can take the hippo out of the wild, you can never take the wild out of the hippo, who in this case turned on his friend in the worst way possible, bringing him to his unfortunate final affliction.
As symbols of death and the devil, snakes have always been a particularly divisive animal and tend to have a drastically different effect on different people. Some hate them and squirm at the idea of being anywhere near one, whereas others love them so much that they want to keep them in their homes. It is estimated that over 160,000 snakes are currently kept as pets in Canadian homes, and With few regulations about the breeding of these animals, there can be issues regarding their behavior, which can result in tragedy. Regardless of personal opinion about the animal, it is generally agreed that snakes, especially very large ones, should be correctly enclosed and kept away from children. Unfortunately, this was not the case when Noah and Connor Barthe entered the home of a family friend who owned an exotic pet store, a home that they would never leave. When 6-year-old Connor and his 4-year-old brother Noah were invited to a sleepover next door at a friend's house to see the animals that were held in the home, they were very excited. Even at this young age, they were already very interested in animals, and the idea of being able to get closer to them than any zoo would ever allow made the invite even more enticing. The friend's father was Jean-Claude Savoie, and he owned the local exotic pet store. He loved being able to show off his collection to children, believing that the interest might stick and lead to a lifelong hobby. The boys regularly spent the night over at his house, as his son was close friends with the boy, and so Jean-Claude was seen as an extension of the family. He cared for the boys very much and considered them to be his other sons, so he would always make sure they were happy and well taken care of. They spent their day playing in the garden, interacting with goats, rabbits, cats, and dogs. They held the snakes and played in the empty tanks. To end the day, Jean-Claude took them out in his tractor, even letting them steer it, which they were delighted by. When they were finished, they cleaned themselves up and headed to bed around midnight. The brothers were set up in the living room on the sofa, while Jean-Claude and his son slept in their rooms. The boys were excited to be sleeping at their friend's house, and the idea that tomorrow they would be playing with even more animals made them barely able to sleep. Sadly, the boys would never wake again. Unbeknownst to anyone in the apartment, one of the exotic animals was planning an escape that night. In the room adjacent to where the young boys were sleeping, there was a 100-pound, 14-foot African rock python with an open vent above it. The species was illegal in Canada unless the owner had a specific license, which Jean-Claude did not have. But the man believed that it was a welcome addition to his collection, which he enjoyed showing off to people. The snake was not friendly, and at times was particularly aggressive towards humans, as it was a timid animal and would attack when scared. The animal had already attempted to escape earlier in the week through the vent, but it had gotten stuck, leading Jean-Claude to believe that the snake was too big to ever escape through the hole, and so it wouldn't need to be covered up or fixed. This was a decision that would cause the disastrous results of that night. The snake was hungry. It hadn't been fed in the last 24 hours, and so it was forced to try to find its own food. In its malnourished state, it was much smaller, which meant that it was now able to fit into the vent and found its way into the ventilation shaft. It slowly slithered through the shaft, moving from room to room as it tried to figure out where it could get its next meal. Although it was slim enough to fit through the shaft, its 100-pound weight began to take a toll on the ventilation shaft, and when it was making its way over the living room, it fell. Pythons will naturally constrict if they are in danger, and so, when the snake finally fell onto something, it grasped it tightly and continued to constrict. There was a smell of farm animals that filled the room, and so the snake concluded that the thing it had grabbed onto was a prey animal. Unfortunately, the snake was incorrect, and it had in fact fallen on top of the sleeping brothers. The smell was coming from them, as they had been playing on the farm all day, but the snake was not able to differentiate this. It could smell prey, and so it would treat the boys as it would any other prey. The boys initially tried to struggle, but were immediately overpowered. The snake was made of pure muscle, and the boys were no match for such prehistoric power. It began to constrict more, wrapping itself around the necks of the boys and biting mercilessly at the children's faces. As the children stopped struggling, the snake continued to bite and squeeze the children, either in an attempt to stabilize itself after the fall or because it was attempting to eat its prey. It is thought that the boys passed away quite quickly as the snake squeezed harder and gradually suffocated them. Although it would have been initially painful and terrifying for the children, we can only hope that it was over quickly and as painlessly as possible. Despite the speed of the attack, the snake did not try to consume the children and instead left them where it had killed them, their lifeless bodies giving the impression that they were peacefully sleeping. Jean-Claude woke up early and came into the living room at 6:30 a.m. He saw the children on the floor, and in the dim light, he could see their sleeping faces, and so continued into the kitchen quietly so that he wouldn't wake them. He accidentally made some noise in the kitchen and peeked out to check on the boys, expecting the sound to have woken them up, but they hadn't moved. This was unusual, and Jean-Claude started to have a bad feeling about the entire situation. He flicked on the lights to double-check when he saw the collapsed ceiling and debris across the floor. The boys still hadn't moved, so he initially worried that the debris had hurt the children, but then he saw his snake waiting in the corner. He looked at the animal and then at the boys and realized what had happened. The boys were blue. His snake had killed them. He ran out of the room to the boy's mother's house, banging on her door and shouting for her. "Oh my God, your kids are dead." Mandy heard the words echo through her hallway and her heart stopped. Her boyfriend ran from the house to check next door, and when he returned, his face was white. "It's true. It's a f***ing nightmare, but it's true." Mandy's world ended with those words. The tragedy hit the news worldwide, and thousands of people sent prayers to the family of the two young boys who were killed in such an unfortunate and graphic way. The snake was taken from the scene and euthanized by a vet who commented on how aggressive the animal was. Mandy began legal proceedings against Jean-Claude for criminal negligence, causing death, to avenge her children. But she knew that nothing would ever be good enough. She would never get her children back. During the case, they found that Jean-Claude had been warned by other reptile owners that he needed to cover the vent as soon as possible, as the snake would be able to escape. But he took his time to get it fixed, thinking that the animal was too large to fit through. What he didn't take into account is the amount that snakes can contract their muscles, especially when they haven't been fed. To convict the snake owner for criminal negligence, the court needed to answer 3 questions. 1. Did he fail in his duty as an adult to protect the children? 2. Did he show reckless disregard for their safety? 3. Did he fail to take appropriate measures to protect the children, causing their death? After 3 years of court proceedings, Jean-Claude Savoie was found not guilty, and the case was dropped against him. Although their mother was disappointed with the result, it didn't matter to her. She would still have to continue life without her children, who at the hands of her friend met their terrifying final affliction.